Hey, I'm Ale.
And I'm Andre.
We're both facilitators.
And we do things a bit differently.
These are our memoirs.
And we want you to be a part of them.
We hope you enjoy this episode.
This is Facilitators Memoirs, where we break the rules and make the magic happen. The art of guiding chaos into clarity, turning dead-end discussions into breakthroughs, and making collaboration actually work. Sounds interesting? Then come join us. Let's get disruptive. Hello.
Hey, hello, Andre.
We're back.
Back
At it again.
And good food, sizzling food this time.
Yes. We're at a Vietnamese place.
Amazing.
And I gotta say, I think by now there's one thing that's for certain, and that's we have a taste for Asian cuisine. Big fans of the Asian cuisine.
We might change it.
I'm also a big fan of the sizzling plates.
Yes.
Today my food came sizzling, and that's just the way I like it. And here we are, ready to have our conversation. And let's get right into it. So what's the topic for today?
Well, we were thinking a little bit about the conversation of how do we engage our participants in our sessions? How do we actually learn and make sure that everyone is happily into the whole conversation altogether, Andre? Mm-hmm. How do we do that?
I like it. So we're going to tap into how do we learn? Mm-hmm. How do human beings learn best? And what does that have to do with engagement? What does that have to do with getting people invested in participating in whatever we're doing with them?
Because we're very happy.
Cool. Yeah,
we're very happy about engaging. But when it comes to participants, making them be in the conversation, that's a different stuff. That's a different conversation.
So, do you have an idea of how we learn best?
Yeah, what I wanted to go a little bit in the direction of is the following. Do you happen to remember? And I'm talking to Andre, and I'm talking also to everyone who is listening to us right now. Do you remember when you were children? Do you remember when you were a little child and you would come to maybe kindergarten? Let's go to that level. How would the teacher convince you to do something? Would they tell you have to learn today, or we're going to be learning, for example, the rules of physics and so on and so forth? Or would they kind of come a little bit from a different direction? I think most of the time they came from the direction of let's play, right?
I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. I would say that later on in school, there's like a pivotal point where all of a sudden it becomes like, oh, I have to learn, and we have lessons and we have this kind of structure. But before that, everything is pretty much through play, right?
Exactly.
It's just experiencing, it's enjoying, it's having fun, it's making a game out of things, perhaps, right?
And experience it, exactly. Making an experience and just having a very good memory of the experience, which means that most of the time, the best subject at school was the recess, the pause, right? Where we were out there with everyone with all our classmates, and we were having the break, and we were actually experimenting how to move and how to go around, having social interactions also with our classmates. All that sometimes were even more critical moments in our lives than just the time that we were in the classes.
For sure, and definitely the most engaging time. So, I mean, everybody was always waiting for, I was certainly waiting for recess.
Yes.
Like my whole school day revolved around recess.
Absolutely.
And then it was always playful. It was always playful. And honestly, looking back, I think that's where I probably learned the most important things for my life, given that age I was at the time. Yeah. I would say that I still like to play today.
Exactly, and that's kind of the proposal that we had a little bit today with our podcast. What happens when we were children? What happened for us when we grew into adults? And we started to think like, okay, now it's serious stuff. And when I go to the university, I have to be very serious about what I'm learning and how I'm learning and the methodologies and everything. When in reality, maybe we should not be thinking of ourselves as only adults. Maybe there is an inner child that wants to learn once again and wants to be engaged in things that they want to be engaged in. If I force that little child to do and learn something that they don't want, maybe it's not going to be engaged. Maybe it's not going to be there, right?
So somewhat of a misconception, perhaps, that a lot of people have, that on the one side we have child's play.
Exactly.
And on the other side we have serious learning.
Very serious learning.
Right? And there's no cross-section between the two. And I think what we're trying to get into today is a misconception.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of space in between. And that's where a lot of good stuff is waiting for us.
But it's very nice when Andre and Ale are talking about this in a very metaphysical, stratospherical way, and just talking about the abstraction of it. But we brought proofs. Your honor, we brought proofs today.
Let's come back down from the clouds.
Exactly.
Let's get our feet on the ground.
For what we're talking about.
And give some examples.
So let me give my example in my case. So there I was being a facilitator for a program that I would have to just basically say like this: it was a big company, a company that is very well known in the fashion industry.
Oh, big money, huh?
Big money right
work,
there.
huh?
Big money work. And they were interested in having what is called a CSR project, which is a corporate social responsibility project with the employees of the company. And they wanted to connect the people or the employees in the company together with migrants and especially refugees. At the time that the big topic was here in Germany of the 2015, 2016 of the many refugees that were coming here to Berlin, right? So they basically come, they talk to me, they tell me about the project, they tell me about what they want to do and everything. And they come and say, look, the one thing that we want to make sure is that the refugees, the migrants are going to be also protected, that the conversation between our employees, they're also going to be in a nice level, that they can have a good conversation. That means that we want to make sure that they also are culturally fit, that they know basically that they're having activities together with people that are going through difficult situations also here in Berlin. And it was like, okay, I see the good intention of the conversation. I'm actually quite happy that once again, this big company is taking that into consideration. And here comes the funny thing. So they come up with a survey, a huge survey, with around 50 questions that was to measure how culturally fit their employees were for the program. And they tell me, Ale, can you basically do a training where you go through these 50 steps?
Okay, so they presented that to you before
and they gave
the
it to me. So imagine that poof moment where they put the whole book on the table.
Structured learning.
Very structured learning. And I look at it and I say like, I like your intention. I know from where you're coming. I'm actually quite happy that I diagnosed that. How about you let me do it my way? And just to keep it very simple, what we did was the following. They trusted me. Thank you very much, fashion industry, for trusting me that day. I appreciate it until today.
That's surprising.
Because once again, I wasn't structured in the way that we did it. I created a simulation where there were two different cultures. We can call it basically like that. Two different cultures, one very mathematical and the other one very artistic. And I separated the candidates that were going to participate in the program into those two groups. I had other co-facilitators that were observing a little bit like the interaction of everyone. And what I did was basically...
How did you know, sorry to interrupt, but how did
sure.
you know beforehand who would be more mathematical-minded, who would be more artistic-minded?
We did it a little bit random at that point, but that's a very good question. And that's, for example, something that one can also see. If you have, for example, the profiles before, you can actually go more in the direction of something that fits a little bit more the personality of the person. But what we wanted to observe was basically the capacity of the participants to engage with one another and to communicate with one another. Like, how would they do it? Would the mathematical person engage, like try to talk to the person in an artistic way, or the artistics would try to be mathematical? What would happen, right? So we gave them a little bit of a role. We told them very much like how to interact, and then we just gave them the task of creating a bridge. And that was actually literally, we had two tables and we told them, okay, we have to create a bridge. You have the materials, but you have to interact with one another to make it happen.
To connect the bridge, so to say.
To connect the bridge, exactly. And they could not actually be talking in their language. They had to be talking in the language of the culture, which made the task even more interesting. Long story short, what we were basically observing was all the things that were in those 50 pages, but not from the point of view of, are you interculturally fit?
Right.
Do you take into consideration the other person's opinion? Are you empathetic?
Right.
Because people, what are they going to ask to answer to those questions, Andre? Yes to everything. Yeah, of course I'm intercultural fit. Of course I don't have bad intentions also when I'm talking. But when you see it in the action, that's basically when you can assess it in the best possible way, not just with a survey.
And that's what it's going to come down to later on when they are in that position dealing with the migrants. It's going to come down to their actions. It's going to come down to their spontaneous communication approaches. It's going to come down to the language they use, the way they interact with the cultural differences between the two parties. So you're kind of putting them on the spot and giving them an opportunity to practice.
Yeah. And as a facilitator, what do I do at the very beginning of the session? I basically tell them like, guys, I'm not going to be doing any test for you today. What I'm going to do is we're going to have fun. And already that puts the mind of everyone, all the candidates, in a different place, right? It's a place of, we're going to just have fun. We're going to interact with one another. That's it. That takes the whole stress off where we talk once again, because we also come from the background of studies. There is a test, there is a survey, there is a quiz. Then our mind is also stressed about that idea, right? No, we just say we're going to have fun, and out of that fun, we're going to be learning.
It loosens you up straight away.
It loosens everyone.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And It's also something that I think in adult life people don't have as much anymore, right? It's something that kind of is out of the norm, where in a work environment you are expected to be more serious.
Super serious, exactly.
There's not as much playful kind of atmosphere around that. It kind of brings you back to your inner child, right? So it kind of gives you that freedom to be like, okay, let me just be like I was as a child, and tap into that inner child and just enjoy. And I think what I like about it as well is it brings you to an experiential level.
Exactly.
So it takes you out of your mind and it puts you in a reactive situational position, which is how it's going to be when you're dealing with new uncertain situations, like a cultural group that you're not accustomed to working with. Right, so it's giving you an opportunity to practice in a new setting outside of your comfort zone, without coming into it from a mind-driven point of view of like theoretically thinking
how it should be,
what should I say. It's more kind of spontaneous, reactive, and experiential driven.
And that's basically where you see your personality, right? Like, how are you going to react? Not how you would like to react or what would be the right thing, but really, okay, I had a problem over here. That means that I also have to improve something over here, right? Like that conversation, and not just having the test by itself, and not just having the simulation, but having a little bit of debriefing afterwards. It's also a very interesting step for everyone to know, like, oh, I actually thought that I was very fit, but there are a couple of things that I can improve upon.
Right.
That's already a very good
And at the end of the day,
opportunity.
you're also able to tie it back to that long list of 50 things, because those things did come up.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you perhaps were even assessing them throughout.
Yeah. Exactly.
But not putting them in the forefront.
Exactly. And or asking them directly, like the question themselves in a very direct way, let's say, but just observing it.
So that sounds a lot like, is that gamification, you would say?
That would be a little bit of gamification. Using simulations, for examples like this, it's one part of simulation, of gamification. And everything that has to do also with gamification is also making something that is very complex in a very simple way, so that participants can actually interact in a way that they would normally not do through just a training, or just, for example, having a person that is telling them what to do or what to learn. But it's more like, okay, I'm like you were saying, having an experience, a very positive and funny experience most of the time, right? Where I can sense the topic in a more playful way, in a way that I actually can interact, that I can play with it, right? And like that, it actually sticks more in my mind, because once again, we're activating the inner child.
What I also like about what you did is it was a very haptical experience, right? So they were using their hands.
They were building.
Actually build something. So that automatically kind of puts you more in that child mindset, or that creative mindset of, I'm actually in a situation where I have to do something with my hands.
And cooperate,
I have
exactly.
to creatively create something and cooperate.
Yes.
And then within that, the opportunities for those experiences present themselves very naturally to practice what they're going to be expected to do later on with that new target group of migrants.
Because exactly, they're not going to be building bridges, but imagine that we could talk about the whole synonym.
Yeah.
You are talking about intercultural fit.
Right.
That means that you're building bridges between the cultures.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
And that's a common thing that people say, right? In
It's a
terms of intercultural work, it's, we're building bridges between the cultures.
That's it.
You were building actual, physical, literal bridges.
Yeah,
so that's a really fun way to do it. And I'm sure from the way you put it, it probably was a success. And a good example of how you can make something more playful and engaging.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
But that's, for example, the way that I like to do it, with a little bit of gamification. But I know also there is a very nice way that you work around the topic of engaging and learning altogether. How do you do it yourself?
So I have some experience in the framework of my youth work of creating games.
Yes.
We've created board games, we've created card games and things like that. But I'm not so experienced in terms of gamifying things in the kind of way you put it. I would say that's not really an approach that I'm too familiar with. But the topic of play, right, and the beauty of play in terms of enhancing learning, enhancing engagement, is something that I tap into regularly, and I love playing with myself. So the example that I would like to bring is, first of all, for the first time here in the podcast, I am going to talk about not youth work, kids in youth work, but yes, believe it or not, I also have worked with adults and do enjoy doing that as well. So there's a range to what I do in facilitation work. Surprise, surprise. And it's something I also really enjoy doing. And I also had this topic of working with migrants.
Yes.
Which automatically brings that intercultural element, right? So that's something that really has potential for enhancing processes, but also perhaps creating boundaries and making things more difficult, challenges, communication barriers, cultural nuances and things like that. So what I'm always looking for is how I can get my participants to engage.
Yeah.
And that, I think, enhances learning already. So what I like to do and what I did in particular workshops that I organized for migrants coming from all different cultural backgrounds together in one workshop. For example, I did workshops on intercultural communication or conflict management. And in these workshops, I was bringing people from different cultures together to learn more about these topics.
Right.
But of course, similar to you, not with a PowerPoint presentation
Exactly.
and this is what intercultural communication means. I wanted them to engage with each other, and they were intercultural, hence intercultural communication. If you're going to communicate with each other and you're from different cultures, that's quite intercultural, I would say.
And for the rest of the things, you can Google it. You can Google the term and you will find it out. It's
Sure,
not,
you
don't
can do
need
the
a training.
theoretical work on your
Exactly.
own. And then, of course, we talked about in previous episodes, some structure is needed. So there is an input element to it of there's some basics. But kind of broken down to the main essentials of this is what is important.
What do we need right now? Exactly.
Right. But once again, I focus on the experiential level, and getting them engaged for me starts at the very beginning. So what I like to do is I like to ask my participants in the beginning, what are their expectations?
Right. Okay.
And I like getting them to document stuff on their own.
That's great.
So I give them a little piece of paper, a moderation card, and a pen, and I ask them to write down their expectations. Then I visualize. I love visualizing as well. So I put the visualization of their expectations on a board.
And everyone can see
Everyone can see what people in the group are expecting. And I'm able to see what they're expecting. So what I'm able to do then is to tailor the workshop to their expectations. It's difficult, of course, with people coming from different expectations, but some people have higher expectations, really input-driven expectations. Some people, it's more about the experience. I'm here to meet some people, or I'm here to gain some first steps. So, there's different levels to it, and I'm able to accommodate that quite well. For example, through group work, right? So we have a group setting where people work together, and I'm able to bring in the nuances of their expectations.
So smaller groups, you mean, right? Like instead of the big group, they go into groups of 2 or 3.
Right, smaller groups. And what I like to do also is to kind of pick the groups myself.
Good, great.
After I've assessed the expectations.
That's
so
great.
I'm able to match higher expectations with lower expectations.
So those who want to network, those that want to learn something similar, so you're matching a little bit like
right.
their topics.
And at the same time, I'm able to kind of pick and choose who might be the kind of people, perhaps the higher expectation people, who will drive the group work process. Because you always need people with a little bit more motivation and energy on a topic-driven level to engage it. So,
but you don't want 3 leaders in one group, but you want one person that can push a little bit like the rest, maybe.
But once again, I'm kind of having a diagnosis of who's there and able to tailor my workshop to them. And that brings their expectations into it. If their expectations are met, they're going to be highly engaged.
That's the thing.
That's the theory, but also in practice, I think that's worked for me at least. And it enhances their learning because there's different types of personalities interacting with each other. People are aware of each other's expectations, and it kind of bridges the gap on an intercultural level as well, because you're creating also transparency.
Yes, everyone knows pretty much like what they're working on.
Right. And to put that together in a group setting is something that really blossoms into something beautiful. And there's so much play involved with that.
It is.
Because I'm getting them active as well. The group work is engaging and they're communicating with each other. There's intercultural elements that make it interesting and fun. So there's just all over the place, great opportunities to learn on a very informal level.
What I really like about your example, Andre, is first of all, you get at the very beginning of the session a group of participants, which is basically a group. People that are disconnected from one another.
They don't know each other.
They don't know each other,
It's a brand new mixed group.
They don't know each other. And then when you start doing something like this, you start giving them a purpose, right? You are working because you wanted to meet your necessities, your needs, what you wanted to do. So that means that all of a sudden that group of strangers becomes a team. They are teaming up with one another to make sure that this happens.
Absolutely. And also the intimate small group work adds to that effect.
Exactly.
Because they're able to learn more about each other on a personal and intimate level in the smaller groups and then bring that back into the big group setting later on. So what I experience a lot using these approaches is the people are disconnected and don't know each other.
Right.
They're just kind of thrown together into this setting. They're all coming with their own expectations. But at the end, they're leaving having their personal expectations met, but having bonded as a group.
And they
you
want to
really
connect with
see
one another,
unity.
right? They want to
and
connect.
often they connect beyond the workshop.
Exactly.
So they're taking not just something individual from it, but they're taking something intercultural and interpersonal out of it and making new connections and networks.
Again, because an experience, something that we interacted with together, is going to create a bond that we're going to remember by far longer than just we were part of of passive participants in a training. No, we actually created a bridge. We actually had a conversation. We actually went together and we were discussing this topic. That's why I want to keep in conversation also with Andre.
Right.
So that means that the cohesion of the teams are always going to be by far bigger.
So how do we learn best? Well, perhaps through play.
To play. Mm-hmm.
And perhaps by being fully engaged and invested in what we're doing. Like recess.
Like recess, exactly. Like
Right.
when you were in recess. Once again, I come back to that idea of the inner child. When we activated that person that we were before, we once again, like you were also saying, what does the child want to do? He wants to play, or he or she wants to play.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, they are not going to be doing anything that they don't want to do.
Right.
Right? They're
Right.
going to be doing what they want. So
Right.
that's the example that Andre was also giving us. I have my own expectations when I come to the session. I want to get those expectations met. If you give me that, I'm going to be totally on board with you. Otherwise, I'm not going to be there. And if you make it very serious, I'm going to just get bored and be overloaded by information. So make it playful, make it nice, make it so that we can actually experience something that we're not going to forget.
Right. And if we think back to our childhood days, right, how did we meet new people?
Exactly.
How did we
Play.
have experiences that took us out of our comfort zone? It was almost always through play.
Yes.
And I think that's something beautiful in tapping into with working with adults.
Yeah.
Obviously, it works with children and youth as well. I've made those experiences as well in my work. But to see it work with adults is something really special.
It's just very special
and it really
because they
proves
have
to
to.
me that it crosses all age groups. It's
Exactly.
just a human being phenomenon.
Yes.
We love to play. We love to be engaged and involved. And that's where real learning happens. That's where real connection happens. And that's how we perhaps even bridge intercultural barriers.
That's it. Exactly.
Which could be a future topic someday, perhaps,
By
right?
all means. I think
Right.
we have the interculturality coming as a topic that we have to discuss in very soon.
Let's keep that in mind. But let's also wrap it up for today.
Exactly.
I think the thing I'm curious about is if we're going to be meeting at an Asian cuisine restaurant again.
Now we have to change it at some point.
Statistically, the chances are very high.
Are very high. We have
But
to
also, I
change
think we probably will be making an effort to diversify.
it. Diversify. Exactly.
There's a lot of good food in all kinds of cuisines.
Or maybe we're going to activate our inner child and remember the kind of food that we used to like also when we were kids and maybe go in that direction too. As a suggestion also to the facilitators and everyone who
I
is
like where
listening.
you're heading. Let's tap into that inner child, that child's play, and see where that takes us, huh?
By all means.
All right. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much for being there with us and holding on till the way till the end.
We hope you were engaged and involved.
And we hope that you activated once again your inner child.
Yeah.
And
Feel free to do more of that. And feel free to subscribe to our channels, to
Interact
share
with
what we're
all.
doing, interact with us. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you have any suggestions for new topics.
Yes.
And join us on this journey. And we're tapping into our inner child.
and let's make it happen then.
Let's keep on rolling.
Thank
Take it
you
easy.
very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, guys.